What is up, everybody? I'm Brett Pape. The guy with a big drink in his hand is Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach Approach. Coach, how you doing tonight?
Doing fantastic, man. Got home from the office today. Spent the first half of the day at home. Had to get something repaired. Had to wait for the guy to show up, and then went into work for the second half for some meetings. But now we're here to talk football, man. So my day just got better.
Good. Mine was a little different. I kind of struggled a little bit today. You know about my allergy problem, but then I was also inflicted with having way too much beer on the golf course yesterday. So it was a little bit longer day than normal. But Coach, what happened to you? Coach, somehow you left the stage.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I was trying to turn my mic off.
I'm trying to fight through allergies and a tad bit of a hangover. And the best way I know to deal with a hangover is to get right back at it. So let's get into the show. Before we do, though, before we get into news and injuries, we will not be having a Sunday show. Last week we had it on Saturday. This week, typically we have it every Sunday morning at 8:30. We will not be going live this week, and we will be not going live the following Sunday show. We do plan on still putting out a start and sit thread, but other than that, that's all we get because Coach has got some weddings over the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to go hang out in the mountains a week from now and see if I can find any deer. But with that being said, let's jump into why we're really here. Let's talk some NFL football. Let's start off. Injuries this week. We were kind of joking about it and not joking about it per se, but, there isn't a big, huge injury like we typically see every week so far through weeks 1 through 4. We did get a fractured middle finger on the left hand of Justin Herbert. Thankfully, they're on a bye this week. He wasn't going to miss time even if they were going to play. He didn't come out in the game. If he did, it was just a play or two, but I don't think he did. Point is, he is dealing with that, but shouldn't affect his play.
No, I mean, shoot, they got a bye week, right? So you're in a situation now, you get Austin Eckler back after the bye week just in time to play the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. So unfortunately, as a Cowboys fan, you get Justin Herbert with an extra week to work on the middle finger. You get Austin Eckler back, and there you go. We're rolling into a Monday night matchup.
It's funny watching that game and watching the big play by Josh Palmer. A lot of people talked about it. It was all over Twitter. We even mentioned it. Just where are they going to go now with Mike Williams being out? And, you and I both agreed. In fact, everybody agreed in the sense that Quentin Johnson was and will always be the ceiling. And Palmer is definitely the more steady the guy. He's certainly the one that you can depend on. And, late in the game, they've got they're milking a late lead. And they completed a 50-yard plus pass to Josh Palmer to kind of seal it. And so the question on who you can depend on right now for the Chargers as it relates to Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston is still Josh Palmer.
Yeah, it's not close. It's definitely Josh Palmer.
I'm unfortunate because I know a lot of people invested quite heavily as far as taking him in rookie drafts in the past year. And we're going to talk about another rookie receiver that's kind of disappointed later when we get to our risers and fallers. But you certainly hoped if you took with a top 5 or 6 pick in a 1-quarterback league that you had been getting a little more production than you got out of him, so forth. But moving on, let's talk about the fact that Kenny Pickett and that Pittsburgh offense is still struggling. He's dealing with a bone bruise in the knee. He's questionable this week. Also injured in this Pittsburgh Steelers offense is Pat Freiermuth. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. It's kind of looking – I saw an interview today with Kenny. He's not a very happy player right now for starters. And secondly, the most important part is he seems to think he's going to play this week. Pat Freiermuth, on the other hand, the hamstring injury, did not participate whatsoever in practice today, and he's listed as doubtful. I know both you and I, after watching, all the people that always say preseason doesn't matter, certainly doesn't matter when you're trying to talk about the Pittsburgh offense because they looked great in the preseason and they've looked nothing but awful so far in the 2023 season. Thoughts on Pickett and Freiermuth possibly being out?
Yeah, I mean, you look if Kenny Pickett is out, you've got Mitch Trubisky. He's got 55 career starts. He's 31-24. That includes time, with the Chicago Bears, which is not the best well-run franchise, right, in the NFL. He's 68 touchdowns and 43 interceptions, got 11 touchdowns on the ground. So it's not like you're replacing him with somebody that's a big step back. Mr. Trubisky's proven in spot starts and in moments he can play. I think the bigger concern is Pat Freiermuth is out. You've got left tackle Dan Moore, right guard James Daniels. Also, right now it looks like they may be out. And so, hey, this may be an opportunity for a guy like Darnell Washington, who's only got one target, one grab for 10 yards on the season, which was last week when Freiermuth went down, to get an opportunity to see what can the sixth lineman in this offensive line do as a pass catching tight end or option in this offense. So as a Darnell Washington fan, meaning I love the way he played in college and how he was utilized and what he can do in the run game, but he does have some athletic traits. And so for me, I would love to see Darnell Washington get an opportunity and see what he does with it, but it's certainly a big step down from Pat Freiermuth. So a lot of things going on in Pittsburgh, but again, well-coached franchise. I'm a believer in Mike Tomlin. I'm never going to count Pittsburgh out.
I'm starting not to believe in Mike Tomlin, if we're going to be completely honest or completely frank. I think the Canada situation, as far as what they're doing with the offense, and then there comes a time where Coach, if you were terrible on this podcast and I kept keeping you on and you couldn't do anything or whatever, once you kind of got to look at yourself in the mirror as the leader of the program and say maybe Canada needs to go. And I don't know what it is with him. I don't know what it is with the offense, or it just isn't working, and it hasn't been working for a couple of years. So hopefully they get it rectified, because fantasy football is certainly better when offenses play a hell of a lot better than what Pittsburgh's doing right now. Moving on, next injury, Javonte Williams leaves the game with the hip injury against the Bears. Did not practice today. Early reports looked like they weren't overly concerned about him missing time. But with him not practicing today, it's certainly something to monitor. Jaleel McLaughlin, which I'll talk about a little bit later. I'm sure you'll have something to say about him. He's looked really good this week. He looked really good. I mean, I should say he's looked really good the first 4 weeks. It seems like every week there's a waiver wire darling, and I would say he was certainly one this week. So it'll be interesting if Javonte Williams does miss time.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, right? Because I'm a Javonte Williams guy. I love the talent, loved him coming out as a prospect. He's had to battle some injuries. 38 carries, 138 yards. He's got 15 targets, turned that into 11 grabs for 51. Hasn't found the end zone yet. Jets are giving up 148 yards rushing on the ground. If you look at the last 3 weeks, they've given up 165, 204, and 153. So you like to think this is a matchup for him that makes a lot of sense. And unfortunately, we may not get to see him this week, but you do. You get in Jaleel McLaughlin and Samaje Perine, which a lot of people were big on in the offseason, assuming Javonte Williams might miss some extended time. And he played 57% of the snaps, but only 6 rushes for 12 yards, 2 targets, 2 grabs, 23 yards to not find the end zone. Jaleel, only 37% of the snaps, was 7 carries, 72 yards, and had 3 targets and a receiving touchdown. He did more with less opportunity. And I think that could catapult him into a situation as the pass catching back this week, which we thought Samaje Perine might be in this offense, and an opportunity to touch the football. He's got more explosiveness. So I know Jaleel McLaughlin was a running back. A lot of people grabbed with their fab money this past week. And I was one of them. I was able to get him on the cheap because some other guys that didn't feel that it was worth it. We're hoping Javonte Williams is going to make it back and play this week, but I'll take the upside of Jaleel McLaughlin in leagues where I need a running back this week.
It's crazy because they talk about running backs don't matter, but when you're able to find a guy like him, undrafted, and you find guys every year late, it just kind of continues to give organizations more reason to go that route. And that's kind of what also got a lot of the zero running back stuff happening, because with all the injuries that happen to running backs, why should I invest heavily in them and, picks and so forth when I can just wait and just grab a shitload of guys like Jaleel McLaughlin? And if I only get 1 or 2 that pop, well, I'm still in a better situation than
you've got positional advantage in multiple other spots, and that's the advantage, right?
Yep. All right, before we move on to the next injury, let's get to our first question. Sammy Clark. Sammy, we really appreciate you coming each and every week. We sign in, and we've already got questions for you. We love it. Keep it coming, and we'll always do our best to help you out. We've got Devontae Smith, James Cook, or Nico Collins? It's kind of a tough one because I wasn't very high on James Cook coming into the year, but I like what I've seen. And Nico Collins is playing his butt off. You got to be pretty damn impressed with what C.J. Stroud has done. You're talking about a kid that is playing his first 4 NFL games. He's thrown for more passing yards than 98% that any other rookie has. And not only that, he hasn't had any turnovers. So I love what Nico has been able to do with C.J. Stroud, but it's Devonte Smith for me. People talked about his BMI coming out. He's a playmaker, and that offense is big enough to handle both him and A.J. Brown. So Devonte Smith for me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you. It's closer. Nico Collins, of course, has played well. He's been the wide receiver one in that offense. C.J. Stroud, the way he's playing right now, is lights out, averaging over 300 yards passing per game as a rookie through 4 weeks. In an offense we didn't think was going to be that good this year. And Devonte Smith is the 1B to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown has played really well over the last couple of weeks, but I'm still going to trust the guy in the NFL that's done it for a longer period of time. And so I'm going to lead Devonte Smith. I've got him higher in the rankings as well. I think I've got him at wide receiver 11, and Nico Collins is down at 19. So I'm leaning Devonte Smith as well.
There we go. Next question before we get into our next injury. We've got this question just breaks my heart, because if you would have asked us, even going into this year, even with the issues he had last year, I think anybody would have thought it's a no-brainer. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So it's Cole Kmet for me. I really like what we saw from him last week. We're going to get into him a little bit this week with our Thursday night preview. But, it's Cole Kmet over Pitts for me, and it's not even close.
Yeah, Cole Kmet, it's not a great matchup against Washington. Washington typically plays well against tight ends. I think they're in the top 5 in terms of points against. But I still trust Cole Kmet. Justin Fields played well last week. I get it's a Denver offense. We're probably going to get in that a little bit later. But for me, it's still Cole Kmet until Kyle Pitts does something. Jonnu Smith was the guy that stepped in last week and got more target share. And as long as they're going to continue to run Pitts on the outside and run more wide receiver routes versus being more inline and working against safeties or nickelbacks and linebackers, I'll take the guy that's going to get more targets, and that's Cole Kmet for me. I think that's a safer pick, safer floor.
Awesome. Alex Johnson, I love that. The fact that our boss pops in and is always in and contributes in the chat, truly appreciate it. If you guys aren't following Yards Per, you're not watching other podcasts on their network, you need to be, because I'll tell you what, when you told me we had opportunity to make our move that we made and it was over here, I've always been impressed with their content. So thankful. Thank you so much, Alex, for popping in. All right, before we get next to our next question, we've got Deli. They have a show right before us. Loved it, appreciate it. They talked about buy high, sell low, or opposite, whatever they talked about. It was all about trading.
Buy low, sell high, whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't mean it like that, but holy smokes. Again, a little bit of the allergies and a little bit of the other.
He said he was drinking quite a bit yesterday on the golf course. It takes him 24 to 48 hours. We're older guys.
Yes.
Takes
I'm
not
not 30 anymore. I'm 52. I wasn't quite prepared for it, so I'm doing the best I can. But great show, Deli. Thank you so much for popping in. All right, let's move on. Next injury. Let's go with Devonte Adams. Holy smokes, this kid. I call him a kid, but he's a Fresno State kid to me because I graduated Fresno State, followed him when he played with Derek Carr up there. With that injury, that looked like that wasn't just out of the game. That looked like it could have been a 4 to 6 week injury with either separated shoulder or even, God forbid, a collarbone. Fortunately, he went in at half, came back out, performed well. I looked at the who practiced, who didn't practice, injury reports today for Wednesday practices. He wasn't even on it. So I don't know what that means. Doesn't look like he's going to miss any time. And that's a good thing because it certainly doesn't seem to matter who's playing quarterback. Devonte Adams seems to make things happen.
No, I mean, hey, if you don't have him, it's Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow, and then you got your rookie Trey Tucker, DeAndre Carter. But I think you're going to have – I think Devonte Adams probably plays. This is, if you want to call it a revenge game, you're at home against the Green Bay Packers this week. Obviously, he played in Green Bay up until last year when he got traded to the Raiders. But Jimmy G should be back from concussion. Aiden O'Connell played well, I believe, in his first game, 24-39 for 238. He did make some bad throws. Timing was off a little bit, but for a guy getting a spot start, I thought he played pretty well. Look, we got to remember, he was a practice. He wasn't on the active roster as the backup. That was Brian Hoyer. He got called up to be the starter this week. So
I'm glad they did that, though, because
me too.
I love that. Because here's the thing. After what you told me last week, that he hasn't even been up on the he wasn't part of the 53-man roster for game day. I was like, holy smokes, why are we going to watch a 15-year veteran? I get having a 15-year veteran to step in the middle of the game and take over.
Yes.
But you're the Raiders. You're not winning in the future. You're not winning certainly this year. I mean, see what Kevin can do after he had a somewhat impressive preseason. So it was nice to see that.
Very nice to see it. I agree with you 100%.
All right, hey, let's get to our next question. Randy Miller, trade ETN for Gibbs and Waddle. I mean, obviously, we have to be talking about this has got to be redraft, because if it's dynasty, it's the other side. And for me, even it's still the other side. I realize that Waddle has not been doing a lot like we expected so far. I think the concussion 2 weeks ago hasn't helped. Let's put it to this way. If you are doing well, even though you had, if you're doing well and you can handle having to wait for Gibbs to blow up, and maybe at some point, I can't imagine David Montgomery playing 17 games. If he does, great. If he doesn't, then there's one opportunity where I still think Gibbs can be something. I also think that at some point, A, they're going to figure out more what to do with him, or B, he's just going to start figuring out how to play the game at this level. So I kind of still like the Gibbs Waddle side.
Yeah, there's very few running backs that, and we talked about this before the show, and I've talked about this on the show over the last couple of years. Running backs most often injured position in football. There was 68 games missed 2 years ago by running backs that were considered RB1 or RB2s going into the season. So for me, if I can get a Jalen Waddle, and look, the Miami offense with Tua, with Tyreek Hill, with Devon Achane, I still think Jalen Waddle is a huge part of what they're doing long term. And I know we're talking about this year, but throughout the season, and I'll still take Gibbs on the upside. He's going to have some games. To your point, D-Mont probably won't play, but I feel like it's like ETN for Gibbs plus. But that plus is, if it's Waddle, I'm going to take the Waddle side all day long. I believe I'm going to hold on to a very talented wide receiver over a running back. So
we're in the same boat on that one. And so the question, either way, redraft or dynasty, it is Waddle and Gibbs for us. All right, here we go. No problem. We got dog issue, so I'll talk over the dog issue. Justin Fields. Okay, so yes, when I popped in the show, was it Justin Fields? So I thought we were talking about another quarterback where I asked you. Oh, no, Kyle Murray. We're talking about Kyle Murray, one quarterback league. Really appreciate you guys' input, because it is a move that I'm thinking about making, because I only have Jordan Love on that team. But for this week, CJ Stroud or T. Law, we just got talking about how I can't believe that we would pick one guy over the other when it relates to Pitts and Komet. And this one, I wouldn't expect it week 5, I would say this, but CJ Stroud over T. Law for me, Coach. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to ride the hot hand. As of right now, that's CJ Stroud. He's got 4 games, complete games under his belt, and I like what they're doing. Nico Collins and Tank Dell, and the offense, the system that they're running over there. So yeah, I'll definitely take. And I love T. Law coming in this year after what the receiver position did last year. Now you get Calvin Ridley back. I was definitely really hot. If you'd asked me this question 3 weeks ago, even 2 weeks ago, I would have continued to pound the gavin for T. Law. But we're talking about fantasy and the points that CJ Stroud seems to be putting up. I'm going to lean CJ Stroud right now. I'll ride the hot hand.
There you go. We got another question. Khalil Herbert or Gibbs, but have Montgomery starting too. It's Herbert this week for me, Coach. Yep. What about you?
Yeah, and Herbert's coming off a game, 122 total yards last week. I think he got 78, 79% of the snap share. We'll get into that in a little bit. I think that's the right call off the top of my head. But I'm going to ride Khalil Herbert after Rashawn Johnson. Saw very little snap opportunities last week. Herbert's taken over as that RB1 in Chicago.
Okay, Coach, you want to get no, actually, we just got our last question. Let's move on. Mike Evans. It was funny on the show that Steven and both Deli were talking about how Mike Evans was somebody that not a lot of people expected with the switch from Brady to Baker, but he's been better. Baker's been better. Baker, like they said on the show, Baker wants to push the ball downfield where, unfortunately in Brady's last couple of years, he's looking to dump it quickly to a Rashad White or to a Godwin. So what we have seen out of Mike Evans has been great and impressive. Why we're surprised, I don't know, because he's only been 1,000-yard receiver every year of his career. But regardless, he had a hamstring injury. Not much has been said about it since he struggled with it in the game on Sunday. Certainly something, if you're a manager of a Mike Evans team, you better monitor and see where we're at here going down the road.
Yeah, and the advantage you have is they're going into a bye week. They're 3-1. They're in first place in the NFC South, so you've got some time over the next week and a half now to get him right. So I think Mike Evans will be ready to go in week 6.
Ventro, before we get into answering your question, can you tell us if this is dynasty or redraft? So I'll put the question up. You let us know if it's dynasty or redraft. Let's move on to our next question while we wait, or not next question, but our next injury, T. Higgins. Man, he struggled all year long. Love T. Higgins. He is a top 14, 15 dynasty asset for me. Suffered a rib fracture and lost to the Titans. Is expected to miss time after not practicing earlier today. He's kind of suffered from a couple things. A, some drops. B, obviously the Joe Burrow issue with him being hurt and still hurt is something that has affected that entire offense. Your thoughts on T. Higgins, Coach?
Yeah, with the calf injury to Joe Burrow, and you're seeing they're trying to get the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible, you're taking away his ability to move outside the pocket and create more off script. It's about getting the ball out in 2 seconds. So that does not favor T. Higgins. That favors Jamar Chase. But, hey, they're 1-3 on the season, and you're already looking at the Joe Burrow situation. So now you've got guys like Tyler Boyd, Trent Irwin, and your Princeton guy, Andreas Office, that needs to step up if T. Higgins is going to miss time. So hopefully that's not the case. I love to see T. Higgins play. I'm still a believer in the talent.
Oh, his talent's incredible. In Dynasty, I'm not worried about him at all. In fact, I read a tweet today where somebody said that his Dynasty value might actually go up if he moves on, and now he's a number one receiver there. He doesn't have to worry about Jamar Chase. Obviously, it matters who's throwing the ball to him wherever he goes. But I love him. I wouldn't be overly worried about T. Higgins in Dynasty. Let's go on to, so Ventro, would you make that trade? It is redraft. So you were trading James Cook, James Conner, Devontae Smith, Tyler Lockett for Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Godwin, and Zach Moss. Coach, my thoughts, knowing that it's redraft, I'm usually a guy that wants to get the best asset in a trade deal. And obviously that's Justin Jefferson. But I think I'm going to hold. I don't know if I would do that in redraft. What are your thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, hey, I would love to get the Justin Jefferson side, but I've got concerns of the usage of Jordan Addison at this point. Chris Godwin is not getting it done. Now, of course, if Mike Evans does miss time, that certainly helps Chris Godwin. And Zach Moss, look, Jonathan Taylor's coming back. I think they're going to get that worked out. He showed up in practice. So, yeah, I don't think that side's the way I want to go, even with Justin Jefferson. Give me Devontae Smith and James Conner and James Cook, which are starters every week, including Tyler Lockett. So I've got 4 starters right now versus getting a guy like Justin Jefferson that is a great talent, but give me the side that I think is the safer bet, safer floor, and still has some upside to it as well.
Thank you so much for coming in, Ventro. Ask
Great
away.
question, Ventro.
Yes, sir. Next bit of news. We came out today. Breece Hall no longer on a snap count. Let it rip as it relates to Breece Hall, and that's what they're going to say they're going to do. So far in the season, 32 carries for 210 yards, a 6.6 yards per carry. Gets to face Denver this week. I kind of believe what we're reading out of that report. And I think what we saw, was it Monday or Sunday? It was Sunday. What we saw was that they kind of let Zach Wilson let it rip a little bit. In fact, I saw a tweet today where he's the first quarterback to outperform first New York Jet quarterback, I should say, to outperform Kansas City's Patrick Mahomes in a game. He actually showed me a little bit. Obviously, he was disappointed. He took the blame for the loss for his fumble. But the reality of it is they allowed him to kind of sit back there and push the ball down the field. So I'm a little more excited about the New York Jet offense now than I was a week ago.
No, I think you nailed it. There's not a whole lot I can add to it. I think the talent, the arm strength, and that Zach Wilson brings to the table, his ability to play off script, right? And if he can just play loose, which is a big conversation going in this week with Zach Wilson, with some of your analysts on TV, just say at some point you got to just let the ball rip. Let the kid play, let him figure it out, not play so conservative. And they opened up the playbook a little bit last week. Saw Garrett Wilson get more involved. So and again, you play Denver this week. We know what Denver's put up defensively over the last couple of weeks. So it's a favorable matchup for him for sure.
Yeah, it's just going to be, let's just see what this looks like.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that because everybody who has Breece Hall on their team probably took the 101 in one quarterback league or about the 102, 103, 104, somewhere in there and Superflex to get him and let him unleash because he's done nothing but be explosive when he's been given the opportunity. All right, let's move on to our next question before we talk about the week 4 storylines. Question is, would you trade Walker and Garrett Wilson for Diggs and Adams? I'll have Allen. Other running backs are Barkley, Pacheco, A-Chain, Hall, 8-man, full PPR.
In other words, he doesn't need running backs, but he can pick up
Diggs and Adams.
Diggs,
I like it.
Diggs or Adams, I believe, for Walker and Garrett.
Oh.
Or is it Diggs for either Diggs or Adams? It's an either or question.
One of the two.
Yep.
It's one of the two. Well, if I did want to, I'm taking Diggs over Adams. So now we're talking Walker, Garrett for Diggs for me. What are your thoughts, Coach?
I'm keeping Walker and Garrett. I think you've got an RB1 in Seattle, and you've got Garrett Wilson. I think there were some concerns with him with the Zach Wilson deal. He's had now 2 out of the 3 games where he has been fantasy relevant. The one game, it's because he broke off the glance route for a long touchdown, and the game after that was not great. This last game, he got signed a little bit more normal target share. So I'm still going to say, hey, it's 2 starters for 1. I'll take Walker and Garrett over Diggs or Adams.
All right. As our good friend Steven just says, the 14 targets for Garrett was so nice because you talk about investing a lot for Breece Hall and not getting – and it's not even so much not getting anything. Not everything's about fantasy football. It's just not being able to see Breece Hall be Breece Hall and not being able to see Garrett Wilson do what we know he can do. And they're so limited by the injury of, good old Aaron Rodgers. He's so limited by the inability for Zach to be good last year that you just kind of want to see who they really are. And the best way to see that is if that offense is going. So hopefully we saw some good signs for that offense going forward. Moving on to week 4 storylines. These are usually just games that we kind of talk about and kind of look back on. And the first one is Tennessee Titans upsetting Cincinnati. You know, a lot of people, me included, were excited with what we saw in week 3 with Joe Burrow. You know, a lot of people didn't think he should play in that game. He just targeted Chase over and over again in that game, and they were able to get the win over the Rams. And the Rams, they played tough all year, so that was a good win for Cincinnati having to deal with the injury. But then they come right back with Tennessee and not only lose, but 27-3, that offense just can't get anything going. I don't know, Coach. For me, it's hard for me to not think that the best thing to do is just put him up on the shelf and let Burrow get back to being Joe Burrow after he has time to recover.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week. Hindsight 2020, you probably should have started the season off with him, getting fully recovered and then have him come back in week 4, week 5, whenever he's ready to be at 100%. And they chose to, hey, we want to make a Super Bowl run. We're going to start this thing off because our best option after that's Jake Browning, which isn't a great option. But what's crazy about this game is you had 400 total yards for Tennessee versus only 200 for Cincinnati. 227 passing yards for Tennessee and another 173 rushing yards, as we saw Derrick Henry get it going. Averaged 6.5 yards per play. whereas Cincinnati was only 4.1 yards per play, only 72 rushing yards, 139 passing yards. So, and Tennessee was 9 of 13 or 8 of 13 on third downs and 1 for 1 on fourth down, whereas the Bengals could not convert third downs. They were 2 for 9. So this was really a dominating performance by the Tennessee Titans in this game.
It was. And I mean, is that something you expected? If we told you that 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, I don't think either one of us would have called this one. And that's what's great about the NFL, but you kind of just want to see Cincinnati be back to where they were. We got Devonte Smith or Scary Terry. Really excited about how Sam Howell is getting Scary Terry involved this year. He didn't get in the end zone last week. Maybe he did, but I know he got – did he get in the end zone last week, Coach? I see you going right to the computer. Help me out here.
Devonte Smith?
No. We're talking Scary Terry. Scary Terry was targeted heavily last week. I believe he had 90 yards receiving. But it's still Devonte Smith for me.
Yeah, it's still Devonte Smith for me too. I've got him ranked higher.
Okay, let's move on. No trades. We got a league in which you can't make trades. Well, that's not very fun. What's the question?
12-man, half-point PPR, Justin Herbert, Stroud, Olave, Puka, Tank Dell. He's giving us his lineup.
Yep.
Gabe Davis, Drake London, Dotson, Mims, CMC, blah, blah, blah. What can I drop and stash from waiver?
I don't know if – I mean –
it's a tough one to answer without knowing who's available on waivers. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a hard question to look at without looking at who's available. I will say you got CMC. I like your running backs. Maybe a better – if that Cincinnati offense gets better, Mixon looks a heck of a lot better. McLaughlin's going to have an opportunity. I like Mitchell. We can talk a little bit about him. He's going to be playing this week. That's Keaton Mitchell with Baltimore. Love your tight ends. Wish you if I guess they're with Washington defense. It's a hard question to answer. Sorry, Mikey. If you can do better with Mitchell, because we don't know much about him, he's never actually been in the league, that would be the guy if you wanted to pick someone up on waivers that I would do so. But without knowing who's available, I like Mitchell to pick up as a waiver guy to throw on a big bench. Your thoughts, Coach?
I'm looking at, guys that he could drop, and he says drop and stash from waivers. We don't know who you can stash because we don't know who's on the waiver wire. But of the players you've got Keaton Mitchell. That's the guy that I'm dropping. I wouldn't even think twice about that. I think that's a no-brainer there. And then you've got the Washington defense. So that Keaton Mitchell's who I'm dropping. You got to have a defense.
So
yeah.
There we go. So if you want to pick someone up that you like, it's drop Mitchell for us. Do I start Aiyuk or Dubs? It's Aiyuk. I mean, Ayuk's the number one receiver for San Francisco, arguably the best. It's the best, in my opinion, the best team that in the NFL currently. Now, granted, I saw someone talk about their strength of schedule so far through 4 weeks hasn't been the best or hasn't been the toughest. So we'll learn a lot more this week against Dallas. But I'm starting Aiyuk over Dubs.
Yeah, I'm starting Aiyuk too because, again, he is the wide receiver one in San Francisco. That's a very good offense. They're averaging 30 points a game. I know that off the top of my head because we were just talking about Dallas offense versus San Francisco with a buddy of mine. But it's not a great matchup necessarily on paper because of Stephon Gilmore, because Aiyuk does tend to line up on the outside. And Deron Bland had the pick 6 last week, but he's a big step down from Trayvon Diggs. So I still take Aiyuk, even though I think the matchup for Romeo Doubs is good. Christian Watson now another week back. Has some opportunities there. I would go Aiyuk as well.
I also think one of the reasons why I'm looking at it is because I think the Green Bay offense, there's 3 guys that I believe that could be the number one receiver on any given week. I think you can have a Jalen Reed big game. I think you can have a Dubs big game. And you can obviously have a Christian Watson big game.
Let's not forget Luke Musgrave.
I was going to say you throw in their tight end. And the reality of it is all those guys being so young, you don't really know who's going to pop at any particular time. So that's why it doesn't matter. Aiyuk is a legitimate number one receiver right now. Yeah. What he's doing in the NFL out of Arizona State, it's fun to watch. 2 years ago, I don't think there would have been many people who would have thought that he would be the number one over Debo right now. But in my opinion, he is.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, Debo, not if he's not playing running back half the time, and I know Debo was putting numbers up before that as a wide receiver and was having a great year before Seams or the running back went down that year, and he had to play a little bit more of the running back position. But overall, Aiyuk's just a better wide receiver, unless you're talking about after the catch. Obviously, Debo's got him there, but I'd take Brandon Aiyuk as a wide receiver 1 in San Francisco as well, as much as I love Debo.
Here we go. We got Tyler. And thank you, Mikey, man. Come in each and every week. I'm telling you, we will do our best. I text Coach 3 weeks ago because we told somebody to do something over another player. And of course, the other player popped. And that hurts us more than we get our own lineup.
100%.
So thank you so much. We appreciate you guys coming in. We've got Tyler right here. Tyler has start 2, Ridley, Waddle, Pittman, or the Lions. And then the other question is Lions or Dolphins defense. Give me a few minutes to look at it. And if you want to do the receivers, I'll look at the defenses, Coach.
Yeah, I don't have the defenses pulled up. So, yeah, I'll answer that. So, start 2, Ridley, Waddle, Pittman, and Lions or Dolphins defense. So, you'll do the defense right now. I'm starting Waddle and Pittman. Ridley until he shows me something. T. Law's not playing well. Christian Kirk over the last couple of weeks has taken over as a wide receiver 1. We're not seeing the Ridley target share. He did find the end zone last week in the revenge game against Atlanta, but I'm still taking the upside of Jalen Waddle. I think there's a higher ceiling there, and I think Michael Pittman, we saw what he's done early in the season with Anthony Richardson and what he did in the one game with Gardner Minshew. I still think his upside is better than what we've seen from Calvin Ridley lately. So Waddle, Pittman for me. And that's tough because I'm a Ridley guy. So I can see why people go Ridley.
Yeah, but Ridley, I mean, I can see why you wouldn't. You got all excited when he was in London, scored the touchdown pretty early in the game,
yep.
And then we got very little from him there on out. We haven't seen Ridley that we thought we were going to see since week 1. So it's a pretty easy decision for me. And as far as the defense, it's Miami over Detroit. I'm playing Miami this week. Here we go. Did we get to this one yet, Coach?
Did we get to Adams? Adam Mulvihill's question earlier? I can't remember. He's
no, it was more of I think we did. I'll look back at it.
Okay. No worries.
You look at the question right there.
I have 2 running back spots. Who do I start out of A-Chain, Mostert, Henry, or Kamara? Well, it's A-Chain over Mostert. That's already been figured out. We'll go over that in a little bit. I've got snap shares there. So I'm starting A-Chain, and I'm starting PPR, Alvin Kamara. If it's standard or half PPR, it's a little bit closer, but I'll take Alvin Kamara after hitting 14 targets and 13 grabs last year. I think there's a safer floor. Derrick Henry did pop last week, but that's only 1 game out of 4 so far. In the other 3 games, he has not been great. So I'll take Kamara. The Saints are obviously going to use him as their RB1, and then I'll take the upside of A-Chan.
I'm going Henry over Kamara, so
I get it.
You might have to flip a coin. You might have to flip a coin on that one, but I kind of like that. I'm worried about the New Orleans offense if we want to be completely frank. And not that Tennessee's much better. Either way, you can be whoever you want to be on the coach approach. So I think the question that you were referring to, Adam, back here, thoughts on trading Amon-Ra St. for Garrett Wilson and Breece. My other wide receivers are Jefferson and Ridley.
I can nail the first question. Thoughts on trading Amon-Ra St. Brown for Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Again, I get it's the same offense, but I will take Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall as 2 starters that I'm going to put in my lineup every week. I'm telling you, Breece Hall is going to be a heck of a player down the stretch here this year. So as much as I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, to give up 2 starters for 1. Now, I don't know what the rest of your roster looks like. You've got Jefferson and Ridley. I guess I should have read the rest of the question. You've got Jefferson, Ridley. Now you add Garrett Wilson to that, plus you add Breece Hall as a starter. I still take the Breece Hall side with Garrett Wilson over Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Coach, we got so many questions. I think our week 4 recap might be over. Let's just keep on answering these questions.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to Bingwin. I think it's like Penguin, but his name is Ben, so I like it. But let's go to 10 PPR, 10 team league PPR. Should I trade AJ Brown and Monday for Eckler and Hall? Who are your receivers are Chase, T, Watson, Garrett Wilson, Jason, Godwin.
So So you would have Jacobs, Ramondre, and Eckler.
Well, Ramondre has not been Ramondre. We're not getting much from right now. So I like the upgrade on running backs. I do believe Eckler is coming back. You've said that after the bye. We know that Hall's going to be getting more involved. So really, for me, you're almost trading A.J. Brown for those two. Little worried that you've got Chase and T, but yeah, I would make that deal. What about you, Coach?
I would make the deal as well.
Okay, moving on to Tad. We've got start sit. Flowers. I'm assuming he's only got start one of these. Flowers, Gabe Davis, or Christian Watson. Let's go to receiver rankings. You got this off the top of your head, Coach?
Zay Flowers, Gabe Davis, or Christian Watson. I do not. I will pull my rankings up as well. We have Gabe Davis. So I've got Flowers at 21, which I know is above Gabe Davis. So I know that Flowers.
Yeah, it's Flowers.
It's Zay Flowers for me. Yep. We're on the same page there. We have, and by the way, so you guys know, we don't have the same rankings we go off of.
We are different. We are different. Traded Etienne for Breece, went for the kill as soon as I heard Breece was taking off the snap count. I like it. Let's just hope they actually do it. Hunter, say that again.
So I love it, Neek. It's a good trade for you.
I traded away a first and Jameson Williams for A-Chain. I still have a first next year and need help with the running back room. I don't hate it. I have no teams with Jameson Williams on them. I liked what I read today, that he's good and ready to go, and they seem to be excited about it. You're talking an offense, though, that has the target killer and Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're talking about an offense that has a lot of people's dynasty
Sam Laporta.
The dynasty 2 tight end and Sam Laporta. You've got, so I don't hate that trade at all. In terms of defense, who should we go with? Chiefs, Niners, or Cowboys? I'll take a look at that one real quick. I'm going to say Niners off the top of the head.
I've got defense pulled up right here. Hold on. Who is it? Chiefs?
It's Niners for me. Chiefs, Niners, or Dallas. Niners.
They're in San Francisco. I would take the Niners as well.
Plus they're facing Dak, so that's easy.
That hurts a little bit.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said it. Any other questions? Madison or Pacheco this week? I like Pacheco. Pacheco, we saw last week. That guy runs angry. I'm getting to be a little more of a fan of him and what they're doing with him.
Yeah, I have zero hesitation there. That is Pacheco.
Okay, while we're kind of slowing down on questions, let's get back to our other game that we want to talk about. Last week at this time, we were talking about 70 points scored for the Miami Dolphins and how impressed we were. They got Mostert going. They got Achane going. They always have Tyreek Hill going. But, Buffalo came up, made a huge statement, beat them 48-20. Thing that impressed me was Gabe Davis is getting more involved. And Josh Allen's a damn good quarterback. And that defense did something to slow down Miami. Real impressive win out of Buffalo.
No, hey, statement game, right? But
losing coach here for more. Certainly a statement game. Really impressed that Josh just kind of went out there and he put up 300 yards, did everything that you're kind of hoping that he would do. What I was most impressed with was that defense. They just seemed to have the answers. They only gave up 56 yards to Hill. Disappointing, obviously, if you're a Hill owner, and I know he was disappointed as a guy that has said from day one that he wants to have 2,000 yards receiving this year. So big win out of Buffalo. Apparently, we skipped a question, so let's go to it. We have traded Tua and Flowers for Etienne and Garrett Wilson. Is this one quarterback or two quarterback? If it's one quarterback, I think I'd rather have Etienne and Wilson. Obviously, if it's super flex, give me Tua and Flowers. Any other questions? Don't be dissing Dak. I kind of have to. When your partner's a huge Dallas Cowboys fans, you got to give them shit whenever you can.
That's right. I get it.
We've got no picture of you. Anyone else see Coach? All I have is a little circle with an image, but glad that you're back and you can talk football with me.
Hey, let me pop out and I'll pop back in.
All right. While he does that, let's move on to a big win and really impressive. We talked about it shortly or a little bit earlier, but what the Texans are doing right now with C.J. Stroud, pulled off a big win over the Steelers. Real disappointed what the Steelers are doing on offense right now. If you've got, and I know that I've talked about Jaylen Warren and I've talked about what he's going to mean in that offense, but that offense as a whole has been somewhat disappointing. So real impressed with what CJ is doing this year. I don't care how many yards and how many touchdown passes he's had so far, but the fact that he has been able to not have a turnover as a rookie at this point is just so damn impressive.
Yeah, I missed that part as I was getting my camera working, but I saw, did we get to Rolling Loud highlights? He mentioned we skipped this question. Did we?
Oh, we did. I finished that one. Then we moved on to the Texans beating the Steelers.
So make sure he's taken care of.
He is. So anyways, your thoughts on CJ and that Texans team?
Love CJ Stroud. Love what the Texans are doing. Love how they're utilizing Tank Dell in that offense. Obviously, Nico Collins was a guy that I was high on coming into the year. So I'm excited. Damien Pierce I think they're going to figure it out. It's a volume play. I get efficiency metrics aren't great, but I still believe that Damien Pierce is going to get it figured out. Like, there's not a whole lot behind him. So he's going to have to get it figured out in that offense.
Let's move on to the next question, Coach. Who do you flex? Dell, Davis, London, Dotson, Mims. I'm assuming he doesn't mean moms. Maybe he does mean moms if he's Zach Wilson, but I'm sure it's Mims that he's referring to. So of those receivers, who are you?
Well, my mom's not in the NFL, and I'm pretty sure your mom's not either. So I'm going to go that.
Yeah.
That definitely is Marvin Mims.
I wish Marvin Mims, if Marvin Mims got more work, Mims might be in the consideration. But unfortunately, you can't expect him to pop every week when he's getting so little opportunity.
Tank Dell, Gabe Davis, Drake London, Dotson. I get Dotson.
It's Gabe Davis for me.
Yeah, I get Dotson. You're talking about the matchup. Yes, it's a favorable matchup, but I'm still going to take Gabe Davis here. Played well last week. You're in an offense with Josh Allen, so there's always an opportunity in the vertical passing game. So I'm going to go Gabe Davis for upside there.
All right, let's move on to our next game, and that's the Chiefs eking out a win over the Jets, 23-20. The story might be the Chiefs winning, but for me, again, the story is actually seeing somewhat of an improvement out of Zach Wilson and kind of seeing that offense kind of show us some sort of life. Rallied from I know they were released down 9-0, but they looked impressive in the second half, and that was nice to see.
No, we talked about this, I think, before the show. It was nice to see Zach Wilson, and a lot of us talked about that, and not us because it wasn't me, but talking about how, I can't remember what show it was, probably Get Up in the Mornings. That's when I typically watch. But they were talking about, hey, at some point you've got to take Zach Wilson. You've invested draft capital in. You brought Aaron Rodgers in thinking you could sit by him for a couple years and learn from Aaron Rodgers and then maybe have a chance to be the guy. Well, he gets thrust into a situation, and it was rough. He was able to hold on to win against the Bills in the upset in week 1, has not played well since. Nice bounce back game because they did. They opened up the offense. They found ways to get Garrett Wilson involved. Far too talented. Breece Hall now has got more games under his belt. He's not going to be on a snap count. I do expect to see this Jets offense look a little bit more consistent than what we saw the first couple starts that Zach Wilson had. It's not wheels up. Let's not take it. Let's not get carried away. But certainly it was encouraging to see what we saw last week. And it's a good matchup for him this week.
All you want is a little bit of hope. And there was no hope prior to last week. And at least now we're saying, holy smokes, maybe Garrett Wilson can be a number one receiver. Maybe Breece Hall can be a number one running back. And so it certainly gives you a little bit of hope. Your thoughts on this trade, Coach? I would love to know if it's redraft, if it's what we're talking about here. But we've got Madison and Connor for Breece and Dubs. How do you like it?
Well, you probably know where I'm going based on how I answered the question earlier in conversations we've had. So You've got Alexander Madison, who I don't think has performed well as the RB1 outside of a game and a half. You've got James Conner. At some point, he's going to probably miss 3 games. That tends to be how it plays out with James Conner. There's not a whole lot of depth behind him, so we're having to ride that there. So, again, most often injured position in football. Give me Breece Hall, younger legs, far enough removed, not on a pitch count, and Romeo Doubs, who both of us like in that Green Bay offense, the way Jordan Love's playing. I'll take the wide receiver and the upside of a Breece Hall over Conner and Madison.
It's crazy. I think it's also it's the ceiling trade. You're trading because you're trading
100%.
And the ceiling is in Breece. If Breece is healthy, if Breece is able to do what we saw last year and remain in the games over the final 14 or however many games that are left, then it's definitely Breece.
John Smith's looking at it the right way. It's redraft. The other guy was hurting for running back depth. He's 3-1. So looking for the future in Breece. Well said, John.
There we go. Let's get to our Thursday night preview. Tomorrow night we have Washington at 1-3 at Chicago. As far as who wins, Chicago's 0-4. You kind of thought they were going to win. They had a nice lead heading into the fourth quarter. Denver was able to rally. But I like Commanders winning 27-20, Coach. How do you see this game going?
Yeah, I've got you guys, people are going to think I'm crazy. I got Chicago Bears getting their first win of the year, 24-21, because this is Chicago. This franchise has not been blessed over the last several years, and now all of a sudden you got a chance at the 1-2 to go for Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. And in Chicago fashion. They're going to find a way to get a win. Right? Justin Fields played well last week. You got DJ Moore involved. Khalil Herbert solidified himself as the RB1 with 122 total yards. I'm taking the Bears. I'm going against the consensus. I'm taking the Bears in the upset 24-21.
I like it. I don't think it's going to happen, but I like it.
Probably not, but that's where I'm going with it.
I like Commanders. Commanders are minus 5.5 favorites. Over and under is 44.5. It sounds like we both have the over. Yeah. Let's get it start and sit. Brian Robinson, he's I say it every time. Really impressed with what that guy has done. So he's a start. And again, I talked about earlier, I like Terry McLaurin this week. I like what he's doing in that offense. For Chicago, Justin Fields' ability to run is always going to keep him in the lineup for me. Khalil Herbert, you've already mentioned why. Yep. DJ Moore, the big game for Justin Fields, fortunately, meant a lot for DJ Moore. Had a great week last week, and really liked what I saw at a Cole Kmet, and I expect him to get in the end zone this week. For sits, for Washington, I'm sitting Sam Howell, I'm sitting Jahan Dotson, and I'm sitting Logan Thomas. It wouldn't surprise me if Logan Thomas got in the end zone, but I'm sitting him. For Chicago, I'm sitting Darnell Mooney, and I'm sitting Rashawn Johnson for the reason that you talked about with Herbert. Anything you would disagree with here, Coach?
Yeah, so ironically, I've got Logan Thomas, and you hit on it, is your sits. I've got Logan Thomas as a play this week. Chicago doesn't do well against the tight end position. I think he's a guy that's going to see some targets this week. And as you just said, I would not be surprised if he gets in the end zone. So, hey, the tight end position this year, the total fantasy
enough, right? If he gets in the end zone, you play.
That's all you got to do. And all of a sudden, you're a tight end one. Doesn't matter if you only had 5 targets and 3 grabs for 38 yards. You find the end zone, you're a tight end one this year. So I'm playing Logan Thomas this week.
All right. Hey, let's get to another question before we get into our risers and fallers for the week. Question is 2 wide receiver spots, 1 flex. Aiyuk, Doubs, Diggs, or Jefferson. Okay, so if I can start 3 of those, take Doubs out. Yeah. Just give me Aiyuk, Diggs, and Jefferson, and it's thank God I have those 3 on my team.
Yeah, that's Aiyuk, Diggs, and Jefferson are automatic starts every week, regardless of matchup. Those 4 are all in play.
Okay, so we used to always do kind of a run through prior to the show, but now with our busy lives, we kind of just get on and talk football and don't even look at the show sheet. But we did. We talked about Puka Nacua and what it will mean when Cooper Kupp comes back. And if you look at, when I read it, he's got his 21-day period is open, meaning he can come back and play. Correct me if I'm wrong. He can come back and play anytime now. Is that correct?
That is correct. He's got 21 days where they have to make a decision if he has not played within those 21 days. But he can play anytime.
With that being said, watching the practice report, hearing what Sean McAfee said, McVay, sorry, I don't even know who McAfee is, but McVay say today in regards to he's not a partial participant in practice. He's a full go. Let's go. Seen him run through he's going to come back sooner rather than later. So with that being said, I'm a full go with him. And I do think the offense, as we talked about prior to the show, can handle both of them being pretty damn good receivers in fantasy football.
I'll make 2 points on this, and I'll try to be quick. You do not want to be a week late on Cooper Kupp. I'd rather be a week early than a week late. So he's he's in my lineup. The second part of that is, and we talked about this before we went live, is Sean McVay is a master at manipulating coverage and understanding how to get the guys he wants to catch the ball targets. And we talk about Puka Nacua and what he's done in that similar Cooper Kupp role. However, he is lining up a little bit more outside now. Hey, that's in preparation for Cooper Kupp. Both those guys will now be able to play inside or out. You can take advantage of mismatches. You can play the slot. You can use condensed formations. So you understand what that is. Closer formations to the in-man line of scrimmage or your tackles or tight ends with 2 or 3 receivers that side. So you can create rub routes against man, and you can create bubbles of space against zone coverage. And he is very, very good at scheming those guys open. So you get Puka and you get Cooper Kupp and you get Tyler Higbee. That's going to be a tough offense to stop. But yeah, I'm full go. Cooper Kupp is, if he's healthy and he's a play, I'm not worried about a pitch count. I'm not sitting him on my bench and watching him go off if he does. So I'm definitely playing Cooper Kupp. You
got it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's get into, so Mikey, his dilemma is the flex spot. So earlier we talked about those receivers. We said it was a no-brainer. So the real dilemma, though, is in the flex spot. It's a toss-up with Mostert, Aiyuk, and Henry. It's still not a toss-up for me. It's Aiyuk.
Yeah, it's not Mostert. We talked about that earlier in the show. Devon Chan has earned the right to be the RB1 there with the upside. Mostert's 31. Has struggled to stay healthy throughout an entire season. So I think he's easy. That's what I usually do when I'm looking at these and I say, who's the first guy I would take out? And I can narrow that down to the 2. And I already told you earlier, I took somebody else over Derrick Henry this week. So you know where I stand there. So I'm playing Brandon Aiyuk.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the next question from Vision. We've got offered Chris Olave and Rachaad White for Josh Jacobs. Should I take it? Yes.
Hands down. I wouldn't even hesitate. We're on the same page 100%.
Is that all the questions? We got another one? Oh, no. This has got another guy that we talked about. Robert Woods.
Yeah.
The Puka roll. Robert Woods. Yes, like it. We're in agreement there. All right, hey, let's get into our risers and fallers. These are guys that, for whatever reason are going up in value or going down in value. My first one, Jaleel McLaughlin. We talked about him earlier. Did really well in his opportunities that he got last week. 2 touchdowns, 7 yards rushing. Also got involved in the passing game. So, yes, Jaleel McLaughlin is my number 1 riser this week. Coach, who's your number 1 riser?
I've got David Montgomery. He played well in the first week, missed a couple games, comes back, 71% snap share, goes 32 for 121, gets in the end zone 3 times, has a couple targets in the passing game with 2 grabs. So in the 3 games that he has played, he's got 289 total yards in those 3 games at 96.3 total yards per game. And he's finding the end zone with 5 times this year. So David Montgomery's absolutely on the rise. So we're going to go one at a time. So I'll get back to you. So who you got number 2?
You know what? I'm going to let you talk about him. But my number 2 is Jake Ferguson. And I said I'm going to let you to talk about him because he is a guy on your team, and he's looked pretty damn good. You talk about the tight end landscape. We mentioned how fickle that is, and Jake Ferguson has found a way to contribute right off the bat.
Yeah, I was high on Jake Ferguson. I picked him up in a lot of drafts. We've seen even though you're moving from Kellen Moore to Mike McCarthy as the play caller, they've always been big on utilizing the tight end position. I didn't think that he was going to be any different. He has not seen the total volume you'd have liked to have seen in the first couple of weeks. He was less than 20 routes in those games, under a 50%, 46.2 in week 2. And then the last 2 weeks, you've seen him at 62% and 56% of the route percentage. And he's been targeted 7 times in 3 out of 4 games with 25 total targets on the season. The last 2 games, he's got 12 grabs for 140 yards. and he's at 9.8 point PPR points in more in 3 consecutive games, with 14.7 last week. So to me, it's wheels up for Jacob Ferguson.
There you go. Well,
I call him by his birth name. I call him Jacob, but not Jake, because that's just how I roll.
Well, there you go. Well, you're close with him because you're a Cowboy fan. Who's your second riser, Coach?
I've got Khalil Herbert, and I believe he was on my follower a couple weeks ago because I felt like Roschon Johnson time was coming, who I'm big on. Well, last week it was a 79% snap share. Roschon Johnson was not utilized. He was a 58% rush share, 16% target share last week, 18 carries for over 100 yards, and he had 4 grabs for 19 and a touchdown receiving. So Khalil Herbert, they've gone back to this one running back versus going by committee, which they've done 2 out of 4 games this year. So I'm going to trust that the Bears have figured out what they want to do at the running back position, and this is Khalil Herbert's team. He's better as a pass catcher out of the backfield, so there's an advantage there too. So Khalil Herbert for me.
Khalil Herbert. All right, my number 3 riser. I love it because he's in my home league. I shared my home league team with you earlier, so I need him to put up the type of weeks that he just did. My third one's Isaiah Pacheco. Everyone talks about what they're trying to do in that offense and it's never going to be CH again. But regardless, I think Pacheco continues to show me that he's someone that needs to be in the lineup. On the year, he's got 55 carries for 270 yards, 4.9 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. Love the tweets where they showed guys I don't know who tweeted it. It might have been Jeff Bell, but Isaiah Pacheco looks like the kid at the birthday party.
Oh, it's hysterical.
Yeah, the kid at the birthday party you
don't
want to give any more sugar to, and that's the way he runs. He's involved in the passing game. He's got 10 catches on the season. So I really like Isaiah Pacheco, and the teams that I have him on, I have no ill feelings whatsoever to play him week in and week out.
Hey, and his carries have gone up for 4 consecutive games, 8, 12, 15, and 20. And his total yards have gone up 54, 70, 78, 158, touchdown in 2 consecutive games. Yeah, I'm all in on Isaiah Pacheco in that offense right now. That's a great call. All right,
to kind of the depressing part for me in these, and that's the fallers. And that's because I'm not going to lie, a lot of times I put people on these lists that I'm heavily invested in my home league. So with that being said, Kyle Pitts. We just had a question earlier in the show, Cole Kmet or Kyle Pitts. God, I never thought we would be in this spot. Here's a guy that everyone told us was, just one of these generational talents. And he is as far as athletic ability and so forth, but just is not able to get anything going in that offense due to the fact that they haven't really invested at the quarterback position. But whatever the reason, you cannot deny the fact that Kyle Pitts is fallen in dynasty value and even redraft value. Redraft may be even worse. It is worse.
Yeah, he's had 3 out of 4 games. He's at 6.4 fantasy points or less. He's not broken 44 yards receiving in any game this year, and he's got 3 out of 4 games with only 2 grabs. So, unfortunately, free Kyle Pitts. I still believe in the talent. I think his athletic profile was off the charts coming out. He had 1,000 yards receiving as a rookie with not great quarterback play, and that continues to curse him. And Arthur Smith's moving further and further away from Kyle Pitts, and we're seeing John Smith be more involved, almost back to where he was when he was playing with the Tennessee Titans. So I get you there. I've got as a faller, my first guy is Jahmyr Gibbs. Still believe in the talent, but unless David Montgomery gets hurt, it's a 37.8% snap share last week, 36.7% route rate, which is not good for a guy that's supposed to be catching balls out of the backfield. He's only scored 9.2 fantasy points or less in 3 out of 4 games. And DeMont, again, 5 touchdowns on the year. He's getting all the goal line work, all the early down work for the most part. You're hoping that Jahmyr Gibbs can pop and have explosive plays and find the end zone and have enough targets and receptions to offset when he's not getting in the run game. So as much as I love Jahmyr Gibbs, he's a faller for me right now as long as David Montgomery's in that backfield.
Most certainly. Another faller for me, though, is Raheem Mostert. And this is not necessarily anything to do with him and his talent. And for me, running backs at his age aren't very valuable anyways. Redraft, this is obviously something different. But just with what Devin Achane has been doing the last couple of weeks, you can't help but think that Raheem Mostert is not as valuable as he once was.
Isn't it crazy how this works? 2 weeks ago, the guy gets 45.2 fantasy points versus Denver in the game. They scored 70, and him and Achane both went off. But less than a 50% snap share last week, and really for 2 consecutive games after being over 70% in the first 2 of the year. Devonte Achane has arrived. Jeff Wilson is getting close to coming back. We know that Mike McDaniel brought Jeff Wilson over from San Francisco. We don't know how involved he'll be initially, but he's going to get some opportunities, and I would not be surprised if you see Devonte Achane and then Jeff Wilson as number 2 in that pecking order, and then Raheem Mostert. But that's tough to predict at this point because we got to see where we're at with Jeff Wilson. It may take several games to get to that point, but yeah, Raheem Mostert was also a faller for me. We didn't realize we both had him on our list.
Right.
But yeah, I'm right there with you, and it's crazy to think after what he did 2 weeks ago. But the proof is in the pudding. Devonte Achane has taken over that backfield.
We're going to get to these last couple questions after we get to our last follower. So let me get into my last follower, and that is Jackson Smith Najibba. And that, again, we talk about it. It just breaks my heart that we're in this position, but certainly expected a lot more. Not even expected a lot more, but just certainly would like to see him utilized differently. I mean, he is getting the ball basically at the line of scrimmage. Every one of his opportunities, the ball is not being thrown to him downfield. It's being thrown to him at the line of scrimmage. And he's not playable. And in redraft, he's droppable. And it's been kind of tough to watch.
Here's what's crazy about JSN is his highest snap share was week 1 at 56.9. It got as low as 46.5 in week 3 versus Carolina. But his receiving yards, 13, 34, 10, and 5. In those 4 games. I think what's even crazier, his air yards was only 10 air yards in week 1, 15 in week 2, 13 in week 3, and only 26 in week 4. To your point, his ADOT is very low. They're trying to figure out a way to get him the ball quickly and see what he can do in space. And it's not as much as we thought he would be, and he will be. He's going to be a great complement to what they're doing in Seattle with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, but it has not been there at this point. So I don't know how you can't have him as a faller. I mean, I agree with you 100% on JSN, and it's unfortunate because I believe his career is going to take off at some point. It just may not be in the near future.
Before we move on to your last follower, let's answer this question real quick.
Yeah.
We've got Etienne, Achane, Cook, K. Williams, Kyron Williams, Breece Hall, or Jonathan Taylor. Don't know much about Jonathan Taylor, so I'm taking him out. I mean, I know him as a player. But I'm going to go with Achane. I'm going to go with Williams, and I'm going to go with Etienne. Your thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, so we're a little bit different, but I absolutely agree. And it is a coin toss on the third guy. I'm going to take Achane because I'm not going to pass up on that upside and let potentially 25 to 30 points be on my bench. I get Kyron Williams because the volume is there. He's certainly the RB1 in that offense. I think where we differ is I still will go Breece Hall. If he's not on a snap count, Dalvin Cook has not looked good at all this year. So I will take him over the other option. But I get why you would go the direction that you did. I think it's between those 4, and you got to figure out. We agree on the first 2. It's
you
just
certainly got to like Breece Hall's matchup better than Kyron Williams. But the amount of usage Kyron Williams is getting, 5 touches on the season. He's in the top 5 in targets as a pass catcher, as a running back, as far as each week in, week out. So I get what you're saying. We both are hopeful that the Breece Hall train is about to really take off.
Yeah.
But we've already seen what we've seen out of Williams. So that's why I went Williams for me. Here we go. Andrew Arp, a guy in my league, has Breece and wants Henry and is willing to give me Sutton too. So you're going to be giving up Derrick Henry to get Breece Hall and Sutton. Yes, do it. Do it now. Not so much. I like Hall versus Henry year for the rest of the season. And now you're just giving me a guy who I may get to plug in periodically with Sutton.
Yeah, I echo that. You're basically getting a potential starter or flex play at Sutton. So you're getting really an almost a 1-for-1. And especially in PPR, it certainly favors Breece Hall. But if it's half PPR, it's a little bit more even. But you get to Sutton, so I'll take the 2-for-1.
Rank. This is kind of, Watson, Wilson, Pacheco.
Christian Watson, Garrett Wilson, and Pacheco, I'm assuming.
But
right?
I'm not sure what we're ranking. But if it's far as give me Wilson, Pacheco, then Watson.
Yes, I'm with you. If we're ranking them 1 through 3, if he's asking who he starts out of those 3,
Yeah.
then it's Wilson because that's how we're ranking them, right? So we agree on that. As much as we love Pacheco, I'm still starting Wilson, especially if it's PPR.
There we go. All right, Coach. Do you have one more follower, or did we get all of them?
I believe we got them all.
JSN. Who was yours after? Mine was JSN. Who was your third? Just remind me.
That's right. My third follower was Kenneth Gainwell.
Okay.
So snap share was a season low, 37.5% last week with just 4 carries, 21 yards, 5.8, 6.1 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. DeAndre Swift's taken over that backfield, 361 yards on the ground over the last 3 games with 2 touchdowns. So it's not Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, Rashad Penny, and DeAndre Swift. It's really Penny's not even really in the rotation anymore. Kenneth Gainwell was the guy in week 1, which a lot of us thought he would be based on what camp reports were. But at the end of the day, I think talent has prevailed. DeAndre Swift's the most talented guy in that backfield, and that's going to affect Kenneth Gainwell moving forward.
Yep. A lot of people thought all the 0 running back guys were just so excited when we heard, all preseason, Gainwell won. And they didn't just say it. They did it week 1. But how quickly.
My Swift shares, thank you. Not you, but those of you that wanted to go with Gainwell over Swift.
There we go. Coach, appreciate you so much. Always good to see you. All of you that came in, thank you. The show would be very boring. It would be just like Coach and I at a bar talking with no one to hear. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, no show Sunday. So the next time we'll be on will be next Wednesday at 7 p.m. But if you have any start or sit questions heading into Sunday or even Sunday morning, do not hesitate to tweet or DM at Coach Bruce 122 or at Brett L. Pape, and we will do our best to get to each and every one of you. Thank you again for tuning in. Coach, love you, brother.
Hey, we said this last week. If you have questions and you ask questions on the show, we want to hear how you did. Shoot us a message on Twitter. Come back next week. Let us know how you did with our picks for you, and let us know if you won or not. Appreciate you all for listening.
All right, Coach. You have a great week, and we will talk to you soon. I'm sure you'll be texting me during the game tomorrow night. Take care, brother.
Man. All right. We'll see you guys.
Peace out.